am so very glad that you clicked on this video today to join me in bringing you some amazing bookish content. And if you are new to the channel, hi, my name is Olivia, and I'm so very glad that you decided to click on this video today. And as you can see by today's title, you guys, I'm finally bringing you my full spoiler-free review of The Meausre by Nikki Erlick. I finished this book a couple days ago, and honestly, after the first 3 chapters, I knew that I was gonna bring out a review. I bring out reviews on books that I want to talk about. When there is something in a book that Olivia needs to talk about, you can guarantee there is gonna be a video, a post, something up that's gonna let you know my general thoughts. I was a little bit hesitant though with bringing this book out, not because I don't think people will like it, because I 10 out of 10, 5 out of 5 recommend. I will have it linked down below, and I hope after this review, you will go and put this in your Amazon cart and buy it. But I was hesitant because this book portrays our world, and it so closely, if not perfectly, depicts how our society globally, our population reacts in times of tragedy, fear, and a disruption of our normalcy, that this book not only is it a great conversation piece, this book could bring up a whole lot of debate and a lot of opinions. And so I'm completely open to any opinions that you have, especially if it differs from mine. Feel free to leave them down below in the comments, but I want the comment section to be a safe place. So if you feel like something I said, you're completely against it, then you can very kindly not finish watching the video, but you can leave your opinion. Just keep it very nice, because I feel like this is such a topic that, you know, it could cause people to, like, once you read it at least, to have something to say, because our world so closely follows this pattern. I mean, with the recent pandemic, with the different things that we've had in terms of like racial injustices in our country, like this book really portrays that. And from me being a person who like doesn't follow the news, politics, doesn't involve any debates, any like Twitter, anything, it was almost funny that I read this book and was like, oh my gosh, that would literally happen in real life. I guarantee that's already happened. That has happened. It's almost like subconsciously, each person is affected by what happens around us, even if we don't engage in those things, that you could literally agree with everything in this book. But with that being said, I love it, and I want to bring this review to you guys. So if anything that I say causes you to, you know, think differently and want to give your opinion, by all means do it. Let's just keep it quite nice, just because I feel like this is a book that could really, I don't know, cause some debate. I think it's really good though. But yes, to give you a general overview on the book, this follows our world. No specific year, no specific time, but our world. And one morning, everyone 22 and up wakes up with a small mahogany box on their front doorstep. So if you're homeless and you laid your head on a park bench, your box was there. If you were camping, your box was outside of your tent. If you were in the desert, it was in the desert with you. If you were on a boat, it was on your boat. No matter what, if you were 22 and up, you received a box. And on that box held an inscription that lets you know, like, your fate, the rest of days that you have left. How long is your life gonna last? And if you turn 22 the next day, your box delivered, so on and so forth. So as you can imagine, the world was in turmoil. As soon as the boxes arrived, Twitter went crazy, Facebook, the government, questions, the news. I mean, banks started losing money. People were taking money out the bank. People were selling their homes. I mean, people were just acting the exact way you would expect them to in such a tragedy. And it shows that fear is such a driving force, and that fear is something that over time, I think our population globally has slowly become more fearful. Like as a society, we have just become more fearful people, and I think it portrays that in our actions. But yes, Twitter blew up, and we're following 8 specific characters as they kind of navigate this new world with boxes. Some of these characters open their box, some of them do not. Some of them are forced to open their box against their will, and some of them are unfortunately told what's inside of their box without their permission. So you're kind of just going through the motions with these individuals. And honestly, when I first read the book and I got through the first couple of chapters, My first initial thought was not to open the box, and I stand quite firmly to that even now, that I would not have wanted to open it. But I mean, everyone's in panic, no one knows what to do, and the government, the presidency, they kind of get out a statement just like, we don't know what's going on, we're going to investigate, figure it out, just stay calm, like we don't know what it is. But as time goes on, scientists work together, and lo and behold, these boxes are real, and they show their fate, and it's true. At the end of your string, you're no longer. And that's just kind of how it is. So this book then brings about the most common thing that 9 times out of 10 is going to happen when the world ever enters any type of turmoil, struggle, disruption, mix up of the normalcy that we live in, is division, segregation, and discrimination. It is just like without fail, as we look back, that is what we see. And this book portrayed it perfectly. It's like night and day. You can go to sleep one night and you have no boxes. You wake up the next morning and you realize that someone is is disadvantaged from you with having maybe a shorter string or a different fate or whatever it is, and automatically you're against them and it's us versus them. I thought that was really nice how the author was able to show that in a way that felt so real. And it was very eye-opening to me to think, now going forward, in times of struggle and in turmoil and things happening in the world, don't let my first instinct be picking a side. Let my first instinct be thinking at the bigger picture of everybody is impacted in a certain way, maybe different from mine, but we're all affected negatively. And how can I be a part of the change in this moment, not a part of the division and the problem? So I really, really loved how she showcased that in the book. And then it also brought forth that next common thing that always happens is the movements that we see. As soon as there's a tragedy, there's always division, and then we have a movement. We have a hashtag that's trending on Twitter. That's just how things go. And I really loved how she showed it. It made it so real for me. And in a couple videos ago, I spoke about how it almost gave me the vibe of nonfiction. And it almost makes me want to read nonfiction because it was as if you were literally reading a news article, but it was more. It was characters. It was people's lives. You were diving into someone's personal life and experiencing this with them. So I really love that the author was able to portray that. And it also then brought out the idea of just how corrupt and off and backwards, upside down, and crooked our government can be. And I also enjoyed reading that. Not that you enjoy that, obviously, but it really portrayed how can I say this? Not only has fear become a normalcy and it has like kind of grown in our culture, in our society, in our population, but being self-centered and being people who are superficial, oh my gosh, that our society has just jumped that direction. Yes, I don't think everyone, obviously, is that way, but as a whole, you could take the average. It is a very, very like me type of society. What can I get? What can I gain? How can I get to the top? Who am I going to crush on the way there? And I think watching how the government reacted in this situation, watching how people who had longer strings, who had, longer lives or whatnot, watching how they reacted, watching how the division happened, it really shed light on that. And it was sad, but I think it was a good realization and just a wake-up call. It was a lot of reflection in this book, I can say. You were able to look back at this and thinking, wow, now when things go wrong, or now when I'm in certain situations, so on and so forth, I need to react differently to them because I don't want to be a part of the problem. I want to be a part of the change. But with that being said, I'm going to just kind of jump in and give you guys a few moments in the book that I just kind of want to talk about, let you know my thoughts, what I thought while I was reading that. But the first thing was on page number 70. And it says, there was no need to fear death row if you are already sitting there. And this page, basically, at this point in the book, you're kind of realizing with that division that's kind of been brought up, like how I was telling you with long stringers versus short stringers, it created this idea that those who were given a fate that was worse, meaning this could have been a 60-year-old person who found out they had 10 years left, that's a short string. versus maybe a 20-year-old who may live until he's 80. That's a long string. But in the grand scheme of things, it's not. Do you get what I mean? And I think it was so interesting how no one could really realize that concept. So then when it goes between the short strings and long strings, you see that division forming, and short stringers, they are unstable. We don't know what they'll do. You know what I mean? We can't trust them. Long stringers need to band together. You know, we have to be careful because we don't know what'll happen if we're connected with them. And for me, then reading this page, how it talks about that people were then starting to think that there was no reason to act morally correct. There was no reason to make good decisions because my fate is sealed. And I thought that is the most just disgusting perspective that you could really have on things. And you would think that in a moment of like a situation like that, where like you're, you know how long you have left, that you would rather do the opposite. And I thought that was really interesting that in a time such as this, the mind then switched into doing wrong, harm, and acting negatively versus the opposite, because what did it matter? And I thought that was really sad, because you think for example, if this was like a 40-year-old person, yes, they're still very young, but they got 40 years. So why, now that they know they have a year left, oh, whatever with it? Just the unthankfulness and self-centered, superficial way just really just jumped out to me in that moment. And it's just thought, like how the synopsis at the end of it, the author put, this shows you how we need to live our life to the fullest. And that just kind of made me think, like, you live your life to the fullest. You take each day if it was your last day, but you do good no matter what. You don't then look at your whole life and if it was like a life that you lived and it was like you were very successful and things were very great, just because now you've realized that it's ending, you don't take all of who you are, all of your character, and throw it away as nothing. I just thought it was sad how people, you know, you've made this whole life for yourself. You've gone this whole way. You've done all these things. You've impacted all these people, just to let the last final moments of your life, you completely change your character because you're upset. Instead, having it more of a monumentous time of like, I'm going to use these last months to continue on what I was doing before. I don't know. I just thought that was extremely interesting to see how the mind of the character she was able to write were thought of it in that way, like, whatever, give up, you know, I don't really care, I'm gonna do whatever I want now. Like, there was a moment in the book where someone said, now that I know that I'm gonna die, I can continue to smoke, now I can continue to drink, I don't need to diet anymore, you know, I can eat whatever I want now. I thought that was very, very sad, because it shows that self-centered mindset. It shows how superficial we are and how outwardly we want it to look good, but as soon as something attacks that, then it's like, whatever, I don't even care. I don't know, that was just very interesting to me, and I really loved how she was able to kind of show that in the book. And then the next thing that was kind of interesting to me is then one of the characters said, we segment ourselves based on race or class or religion or whatever distinctions we decide to make up, and then we insist on treating each other differently. We never should have allowed them to start labeling people as long strings and short strings. We made it too easy for them. And that's true. I think whenever there's something that goes wrong, we create that us versus them. And for whatever reason, whatever is the us always becomes the stronger one. You know what I mean? It just automatically just becomes a stronger one, no matter what. And then the them is always the one tossed aside. And I just think it's sad that as a culture, as a society, in situations we do that. You know what I mean? You would think in a time of trouble like this, when everyone is affected, that instead, let's band together. But there's like, it always ends up being an us versus them. And it's just really sad to think like we could literally find any reason to cause division. Any reason. Like, it's like, if there is something, like if A is against B, then division. It can't be like, but maybe there's a common ground. Maybe we can agree to disagree. It's division. And I just thought it's just like, as we look at our world today, there's a whole bunch of division. You know what I mean? Tons of it. It is divided. And it's just, I don't know, it's just a very sad thing. And I'm glad she was able to bring that to light in the book. I think that's why I feel as though this book was really great to read, especially as the first book going into the new year. But that's why I recommend this book so much, is because it opens our eyes and causes us to reflect on the reality around us. And sometimes it's a hard pill to swallow when you acknowledge things about yourself and you have to look at yourself and you think, man, I did wrong. Man, I shouldn't have done that. But to be able to acknowledge it and to see it, then you can fix it. If you can't acknowledge it, you can't fix it. And I think I really like that she was able to show it, because yes, like you have, you know, when you watch the news and there's all these things going on, there's never that voice in the middle that's like shedding light on all the things that are wrong. It's just showing one side and this side. And I like how she just showed a whole, like as the whole, she showed light on the negativity to be seen. Because I find that usually gets muddled and it's always like, that's not fair, but we're not highlighting it. We're just saying it's not fair, but it needs to be highlighted, looked at, examined, and changed. And so I really love that she was able to put that in here. And then, there was a part where one of the characters was talking to someone, and that person said, why should you view yourself with any less compassion when you go through things in your life and you look at another person and you're like, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry that they went through that. Like, I feel so bad that is something that they had to go through. And then to have the mindset when something goes negative for yourself, it's like you want to then find a way to like, was it something I did? Because this character was like almost blaming himself for his circumstances. And the person said, but why do you have less compassion for yourself? Shouldn't you have the same compassion for yourself as you have for someone else? And I think that is such a really important thing, especially for my life, because I have a tendency to be more compassionate towards others, or can sympathize with someone else's weaknesses and kind of like understand what someone's going through and being able to listen to their pain and, you know what I mean, and like encourage them. But when I am in a situation, it's so much easier to look at it, and since you can't fix it, you can't pinpoint why it's the way it is, to almost go against yourself. Because when you can't find a solution to why it's the way it is, if you go against yourself, you gain power over it. And I find that that's what a lot of the characters in this book were doing in that moment, is that I can't control why it's happening. I don't know who to blame, but if I get upset at myself for the choices I've made, although I have done nothing wrong, I gain control over it. You know what I mean? And then I gain control over it. And I think that was just like a really eye-opening thing, because I think a lot of us do that. You know, when we can't find a reason, and maybe there's not a reason, maybe it's just life. We want control over it, and that comes with that self-centered kind of way where we're really focused on ourselves. And since I can't figure out why it's happening to me, I have to find something to blame, and it's always easiest to blame ourselves, or we blame others. But I just thought it was really nice that he showed how we can blame ourselves, because that is something that I personally find that I've struggled with a lot, is that when I can't control it, look at myself, because I can have power over that. Since I can't control this person, that person, the situation, or why it's happened, I can blame myself. So I really like that she put that in there, because I actually have never heard this ever have even talked about it with anybody in that way. It's usually like you blame someone else for the situation, but there's also times when you blame yourself because it's easier. You know, you have 100% contact with yourself all the time, so you have that punching bag, you have that person you can go against. Whereas it's a little bit harder to go against someone when they're not physically with you. You know what I mean? When it's like the government, when it's like the school teacher, when it's like some random person in society. It's hard because you're not with them. You can't do it. But when you're with yourself, it's so much easier to. So I really liked how she was able to showcase that kind of mindset towards this issue. And then the next thing that I really enjoyed was one of the main characters said, Javi heard that plenty of the college seniors had vowed to not open their boxes when they arrived. The hashtag keep it closed briefly trending online, but it was easier tweeted than done, Javi thought. And I thought that was hilarious. I actually chuckled at that. I put my little sticker for my laughing, cringing moments. I thought it was funny because, again, another commonality that we always see whenever there's anything wrong in our world, we get our hashtag, we get our movement, you know what I mean? We get our thing that we kind of plaster on Twitter, on social media to kind of glaze over the fact that there's been so much issue, to try to hide it, like, oh my God, let's try to fix it. But eventually the hashtag slowly but surely die down. You know what I mean? So it's easy to tweet it. It's easy to put it out there, show your support. It's easy to do that. But to really hold true to it, to be firm to your word and make a decision and change it, that is something that we struggle with as a people. And I really like that she put it in there in that such a comedic way, but it's easier tweeted than done. I absolutely love that because it's true. It's super easy to tweet it on there. Oh, we support you. We want it to succeed. You know, everyone, you know, all these things. And then behind closed doors, you're really focused on yourself because that's the most important thing, you know? And so I thought that was amazing. I think she literally hit the nail on the head in that moment. And then that brings me to then another hashtag that was then brought up in the book about this, which is called hashtag strung together. And it says a handful of journalists and politicians all had deemed it as a movement. And oh my gosh, do we love our movements? I mean, yes, I think they're good. I think they give us a voice to those who the movement is centered around. I think it gives a voice. I think it brings awareness to so many things. I just like the way the author put it in the book. Wasn't that these are negative things. It's that it's funny to see how the world just follows a trend. We literally follow a trend. Issue, division, hashtag movement. And it just shows that's how it goes. Just follows that little wave, that little pattern. And then the next time, issue, panic, fear, division, hashtag movement. It just kind of goes that way. And she almost put it in there in a way to kind of like, you're right. Like, that's funny. That's funny that's how that always goes. You know what I mean? Why can't it just go with issue, we band together, we conquer it, we figure it out, hashtag movement. You know what I mean? Why does it always have to go that pattern? And I really like that she showed that, you know, kind of how that's literally how things go. But you guys, I love this book. I hope my rambling got my point across. I like talking about books. This book I wanted to talk about with you guys. I want to let you know my thoughts. I cannot recommend a book enough. This book, I literally tabbed it so much. I used a whole sheet of tabs, like a whole page of tabs. This was amazing. From the very first chapter, I was hooked all the way through the end of the book. It is a perfect book to read in the beginning of the year, the middle of the year, the end of the year. It's a perfect book to recommend to people in your life. It's a perfect conversation piece to talk to people in your life, colleagues, friends, family. Would you open your box? Would you keep it closed? I love this book, and I think Nikki did a fantastic job with it. I think she showcased and portrayed so much in our society that needs to be showcased and portrayed, and I am so glad that it was the very first book that I read this year, and I'm so glad that it was my very first hardcover ever. I'm so happy about it because I was so against hardcover books, and literally I loved it. Don't know if I'll buy a whole bunch of them because they're expensive, but I loved it, and I really do hope that you guys love this video. Let me know down below if you've read this book, if you want to read this book, if you're going to put it in your Amazon cart as you're watching this. Let me know your general thoughts. If you have any opinions, questions, comments, concerns, leave them down below and answer the question for me. Would you open your box or would you keep it closed? And yeah, do not forget to give this video a thumbs up and hit your notification bell so you can be notified every single time I post a video, and subscribe to the YouTube channel and join this Bookish fam because we are so nice and we have so much fun together. But I'm so glad that you guys are here. I'm so glad that you're part of this Bookish fam at Living for Books, and I will catch you in my very next video.